to the August 2021 edition of City Connection. City Connection is the live television program with Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. It's offering the community the opportunity to hear about efforts from City Hall and beyond. With Community Media Center, I'm your host, Linda Galash, and today we also welcome to the program Stephanie Adams, Executive Director with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks. We'll hear a bit about tree planting efforts, educational programming, and other events put on by the organization, as well as about the upcoming annual fundraiser, the Green Gala. And also later in the show on City Connection, we'll provide time for you with our guests. You can ask your questions of our guests or Mayor Bliss, and that's in the second half of the program. You can take part in that conversation by sending your questions to the email address cityconnection@grcmc.org, through Twitter. It's at GRTV Access, or by commenting on the GRTV Facebook page. City Connection is a collaboration between Community Media Center and the City of Grand Rapids and is broadcasting live today, August 2nd, 2021, here on Community Access Television Channel 24, as well as live streaming at therapidian.org and on GRTV's Facebook page. We'll be broadcasting and rebroadcasting throughout the month on Channel 25, GRTV. And now in studio with me, Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. Mayor, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be back.
It's quite a summer, and you were away last month. Lots going on in the world. And tell us a little bit about, let's just kind of catch up on some things at the city. We had a great conversation last month with Commissioner John O'Connor and learned quite a bit about First Ward things over here on the west side.
Yes, and I appreciate him sitting in for me. Yeah.
So one of the things we actually brought up briefly last month, but I think there's something new to update on, is with the high, what we've had is some violence, gun violence in the summer. It always does spike, but even a little worse than usual. The Urban League is going to be part of the Cure Violence initiative, and it's being led by Grand Rapids Urban League.
Yeah, so that, I think we've been talking about implementing an evidence-based violence prevention program for years now, and it's nice to have it move forward with execution and implementation. So what we decided to do at the city, it's actually being managed through our Office of Oversight and Accountability, Mr. Davis. We're contracting with the National Organization of Cure Violence, and then our local partner is going to be Urban League. So at our last city commission, actually 2 commission meetings ago, we finalized our agreement with the Urban League, and so they'll be the local partner doing a lot of the hiring and identifying the individuals who will serve as violence interrupters and work in partnership with the city and with the National Organization of Cure Violence. So I'm excited to see that move forward and to hopefully start to see an impact that that program has on our community.
And is the city still looking at some creative ideas on some of the ways to address this in our community beyond the Cure Violence?
We are. So the department, the chief, continues to do a lot of work in community, both with the Boys and Girls Club and the On Base program. So there's a whole host of efforts that our police officers and the department are doing in partnership with community, building relationships with the hopes of preventing violence. And then we still have our SAFE task force that may change over the next, I'd say, 6 to 9 months. We just had a report come out about all of the different public safety committees and task force, and talked about how do we align those efforts. But as of right now, our SAFE task force is also hosting another pitch night. So they'll welcome individuals and organizations from the community to come forward and pitch ideas on what they think needs to happen to prevent violence. And so that will happen. And the City Commission, we allocated just at our last meeting, $52,000 to go towards that effort. So again, we know there's not one thing that we can do to prevent violence and to create a safer community. It really takes a multi-pronged approach, and so that's what you're seeing right now.
Okay. Well, give us a little bit of the scope of what's actually been happening in our community over the last couple months, and a little bit of the trajectory of it, and then maybe some efforts that are already in place and what you're seeing.
Yeah, so a lot has been happening this year. You know, as I said, the chief has worked really closely with community and specifically around public safety to build those relationships. Just launched a couple weeks ago the clergy, working in partnership with our police department, again, to build relationships. That's really key to a lot of the work that the department is doing. When it comes to stats, we just had, at our last public safety meeting, we had an update on the numbers from last year. So It's a little bit of a lag time because the data is collected through the Uniform Crime Report. So you have all of the data that's submitted to the federal government and then the finalization of the report. So that annual report from our police department was submitted to the Public Safety Committee just a couple weeks ago. And we know that last year we had a spike in violence, all types of violence, especially gun violence and homicides. So this year our numbers, fortunately, they're not as high as what we saw last year. I'm always cautious about saying that because we still have 5 months of the year left. But I think a lot of the efforts that we put in place this past year have really helped with building those relationships. And then there are a lot of factors that were just out of our control that we also believe impacted some of the violence that we saw last year from the pandemic, and a lot of anxiety in community, and schools being closed down, and youth programs being closed down, and camps being closed down, and jobs, people were out of job, furloughed or laid off of their jobs. So hopefully as we come out of this pandemic, that too will help with providing resources to people to help prevent some of the violence that we saw last year.
Okay. Well, there's a little bit of a growing anxiety actually right now, and we're talking a little bit about coming out of pandemic, and we've been able to actually have a little bit of relief recently, but there are some new and not great directions as far as where cases stand, and I wonder if you could tell us where we are here locally, if there's any new thoughts of whether meetings will be in person for the City Commission, for example. What else you could tell us?
So as of right now, we're watching the numbers really closely. When you look at the data in our county compared to other counties, we're seeing the same increase in positivity rate. We are going up a little bit, but we still haven't passed that threshold of concern yet. We're still, people are still getting vaccinated. That's still the number one thing that we can do to prevent the variant and prevent an increase in positivity rate. And I know lots of people are talking about breakthrough cases, but those are still minimal. And if you've had the vaccine, you're less likely to have severe symptoms. So we're still strongly working with our health department to encourage people to get vaccinated. But if you look at our Kent County numbers with positivity, and then what we really want to look at is hospitalizations and deaths. We haven't seen a significant spike yet. We're hoping that we don't, because our vaccination rate is well above, at least for the first shot, still above. As of yesterday, we're at 63.9% in Kent County, so a little bit over the statewide percentage rate for vaccinations. I think as more universities and places of employment mandate vaccines to come back to work or to go to school, we'll start to see those numbers bump up. We really want to get to that 70%. That's the number we're shooting for. We know that that's key for herd immunity. So again, we're just watching the numbers, encouraging people to get vaccinated, and then as we see what happens in the community, particularly in our community, we'll have to make decisions on what we want to do. But as of right now, there's no state of emergency at the state level. Going back to meetings, there has to be a state of emergency in place in order to meet virtually, because under state law, through the Open Meetings Act, we have to meet in person. So we were able to meet virtually because the governor had supported legislation to allow us to meet virtually, and then we had extended a local state of emergency that has since passed. And so we're just in conversations with the county, I think like everyone, whether you're an organization, or a company or a school, you're looking at the data and you're trying to make decisions to, do what's best for the individuals that you work with, but also the community based on the information you have at that moment. But I'm very hopeful that as vaccines go up, the number of people getting vaccinated, we'll start to see that positivity rate go down again.
Any new initiatives as far as encouraging folks or leading folks to become vaccinated? It's really kind of leveled off, not quite completely, but that's the biggest struggle at this point.
Yeah, we have seen a plateau. It's actually, we saw the numbers plateau probably 5 or 6 weeks ago. There's not good data to show that the lottery that was put in place is helping. I think what I keep hearing and what we know from data and from focus groups is that the individual that is most likely to convince somebody to get a vaccine is their personal doctor, someone that an individual trusts, and it has to be based on medical science and healthcare. So it's not helpful when politicians go out there and say you should get vaccinated. I've done that, but what we know is what's more powerful is when you have a one-on-one conversation with your doctor and your specific concerns or fears can be addressed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it is still summer, and that means lots of events and activities, and I've not heard of anything being canceled yet, so I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about what we still have to look forward to, with summer, a third of it at least still here.
Yeah.
There's the September Mayor's Grand River Cleanup, and it's designed a little bit differently this year. It covers several cities. Tell us about that in this year's version.
Yeah, so I think we learned a lot from last year. So last year, the Mayor's River Cleanup, which typically happens on one day in September, where you have well over 1,000 people come together to clean up the Grand River. Last year, during COVID, we spread that out over a week, and we divided up the teams over the course of 7 days, and we went to different sections of the river, as you said, through multiple cities. So this is a joint effort of myself and a number of other mayors, and then the WEMEAC, the West Michigan Environmental Action Council. So they're coordinating it, and the feedback from last year was so positive. They decided to do something similar this year and spread it out. I believe we were able to cover a lot more ground than just doing it in one day in a 4-hour period. And we were able to, if we didn't get to the entire patch of the river on this day, we were able to send another group out on another day. So it ended up working out really well, and so we're doing something similar again this year. Although I'll be out on that Saturday, the 11th, I'll be out, and then I plan to stop by a few groups throughout the week, and I know several of the other mayors do as well. But one other thing about events, so one thing we do know about COVID, and this has been true throughout the entire pandemic, we know that being outside is still safer and that the risk of transmission is less when you're outside. So we continue to encourage people, get outside, enjoy the weather. We know you're at a higher risk when you're indoors for transmission. And so hopefully we'll continue to have these opportunities for experiences outside where we can still come together. And especially if you're vaccinated. We know that the risk, if you're vaccinated and you're at an outside event, the risk for transmission is really quite low.
Okay. And a lot of times in the past, I'm not sure how it worked last year, there's sort of a little bit of a celebration part of the event too, and now being spread out over a week. Any element to that this time?
Yeah, I haven't heard if we're going to do anything like that. So last year, there were a couple kind of smaller social gatherings afterwards, but I haven't heard if we're going to spread that out over the 7 days as well. I know quite a few folks met up at Canal Park by City Built and got together after they spent a few hours cleaning up the river.
Okay.
Yeah.
What other events this summer to look forward to?
There are so many events. So there's a lot of music, which is great. I think people miss that. So Studio Park has music out on Listening Lawn. City Built twice a week is having music outside along Canal Park. You can go to the DDA and see all of the different concerts. I know, Stephanie, when we talk about Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, we'll talk about Blues on the Grand coming back downtown. We're really excited about that. The nonprofit partner this year for Blues on the Grand is Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, which is exciting. So I know I'll be there volunteering at the beer tent in September to help raise money for Friends of Grand Rapids Parks. So there's lots of opportunity for people to get out and enjoy. The Graham has music out in front of the art museum. Even though Rose Park Circle isn't quite done yet, you can still get out and enjoy music. Wonderful.
Well, Rose Park Circle, tell us about that and that project, because it is midway right now.
It is. So those of us who've spent any time at Rose Park Circle over the last couple of years, you can tell that it needed a little love. So a lot of the concrete had been crumbling, the bathrooms were a little worn, the stage, the lighting hadn't been upgraded, the electrical conduits hadn't been upgraded, some of the trees needed to be replaced. So about 2.5 years ago, a group came together to help raise money and actually create a conservancy to make sure that that beautiful piece of art that's in the heart of our city called the Ecliptic, designed and created by Maya Lynn, would be taken care of well into the future. And during that process, we identified a list of upgrades that needed to happen and just really fixing it up. I mean, a lot of it is just revitalizing the beautiful piece that was there when it was first built. So it came out to about $2.8 million, and it was a mix of private funds as well as some public funds to upgrade that space. We're hoping that it'll be open back up by Labor Day and before Art Prize, but it should be stunning.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a significant investment into what I think is one of the most beautiful public spaces in the heart of our city.
Good note to take a break.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break right now, and we'll come back with Mayor Bliss will be speaking with Stephanie Adams of Friends of Grand Rapids Park. Back after this.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push the creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Welcome back. Today I'm really excited to have Stephanie Adams with us. She is the CEO and president of Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, a nonprofit organization that was started, what, was it 10 years ago? 12 years ago. I should know that. I should know that because I was one of the initial founding members of Friends of Grand Rapids Parks back when I was a city commissioner, and then was very supportive, was a liaison on the board, but now I serve on the board as of January. Yeah. So I love this organization. It's one of my favorite organizations in our city. And we do a lot of work in partnership at the city with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks. So I want to introduce Stephanie, give her a chance to talk about herself, and then talk about Friends, and then talk about all of the exciting efforts that you're making right now across our city. So for those who don't know you, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and kind of what brought you to this place as the leader of Friends of Grand Rapids Parks.
Well, thanks for having me on. I have been at Friends for 4.5 years now, And when I originally saw this role, it was perfect for me. I've been in the nonprofit world for over 15 years and really just want to make that transition into something that was so near and dear to my heart. Grew up in the city of Grand Rapids and Alger Heights. Garfield Park is the space where I learned to swim in the pool. That's no longer there, but water feature will be going in there very shortly with a splash pad. So very excited about that. And that really impacted my entire life. And when I worked at the Crack Center early on, I realized how much a park and outdoor space or community space really makes as an impact on a neighborhood. And so it was a natural fit, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
Well, I'm glad you're there. Appreciate all your leadership. So for folks who are not familiar with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, can you talk a little bit about the organization itself, mission, values, and what you hope to accomplish?
So our goal really is about empowering people to cultivate these vibrant green spaces in the community. Every park in our system is completely different. It's very unique to the neighborhood that is right there next to the space. Not only that, we have also had this great opportunity to look at the tree canopy in the community, with the emerald ash borer coming and just devastating our community so many years ago. We've been really working hard to work towards that 40% tree canopy goal set with the city, with your leadership, and working towards changing the heat island impact that a lot of our neighborhoods have, taking away some of that asphalt and putting in these green infrastructure spaces that really impact an entire community, not only now, but well into the future. And so, especially with COVID and everything that happened, it was a great time to have a lot of parks in the community. There's over 76 in Grand Rapids, which sounds like a lot, but we still have a lot of kids that aren't right within a 5-minute walk of an outdoor space. And you and I both have a passion to change that and make sure that that is the legacy that we hopefully can leave for our city, for our future, for our kids. Kiddos that need those spaces. So our focus really is on making sure that we add more infrastructure, more parks, more green spaces, because once those spaces are gone, they're gone. We don't get those back. And so it's really important, especially as we saw with COVID, we see numbers creeping up here and there, and really they're one of the safest spaces that we have, and I think that we realize that. And I think even for us, before that, we really knew that there was such inequity in green spaces across the city, and it's just from, once you create a community, it's hard to kind of revert back to more green spaces. So that's something we really kind of focus on. Our values are all about justice, equity, diversity, inclusion in those spaces, and so a lot of the work that we do is really focused on our neighborhoods that have the most need for tree canopy and have the most need for park infrastructure.
Yeah. So you are a leader in advocating for trees, green space, playgrounds, access for children and families. And then in addition to that, Friends has a number of programs. So for individuals who aren't familiar with some of the programs that you lead, you want to talk a little bit about those, whether it's the forestry program or the Connecting Children to Nature. So why don't you share a little bit?
So kind of think about the full spectrum of how people can get involved in our community. We really want to get people involved in becoming maybe a volunteer, maybe taking that first step. But sometimes it starts with just joining us in a park and feeling safe and feeling comfortable to take ownership of that space that's right across the street. So Movies in the Park is something that we launched a couple years ago and brought back this summer. So we have a lot of those free programming opportunities. We also partner with different neighborhood associations or neighborhood groups that have a park in their neighborhood, but they're not really sure what to do next. How do they invite neighbors to come out and be a part of it? So it could be something as simple as we help organize an Easter egg hunt to just taking a walk in your neighborhood park. So those are just some of our park activation, and we feel like park activation is that first step. And then from there, hopefully we invite people to come volunteer with us, clean up a park, become a park steward. Or if you are really interested in tree plantings, anybody can plant a tree. We have tools for little ones as small as 3, all the way up to people who 80 plus. And so that's another piece of what we do is have people go through our neighborhood forestry program and become a caretaker of trees right within your neighborhood, be an advocate, plant trees on private property. It really takes everyone to impact the green infrastructure of our community. And the reason why it's so important, obviously, is the emotional, physical, and health benefits, but also money-saving benefits, too, for home, we saw a spike in electricity going up this year, and having a tree-lined street makes a huge impact on an entire neighborhood for that. And then the final programming that we really focus on is how do we fundraise for special projects. We're so grateful to have a city millage that supports parks, but there's so much more that needs to go into it. We put a lot of wear and tear on those beautiful downtown parks as well as other large, kind of more regional parks that we have, and some of that infrastructure piece just takes a little bit more. So we really focus on who can come together, who has a passion for it, and how do we kind of take our parks to the next level.
Yeah, and people will sometimes ask me this. They'll say, well, we have a parks millage, and I say the best park systems and the really, truly, the cities that have the best parks and access to parks and green space and playgrounds are the ones that have a diverse funding stream. So yes, the millage is great. So our millage, a portion of it is dedicated to opening our swimming pools, capital investments, and some operations and recreation programs. Then we have general fund dollars, but that only goes so far. And if you're gonna add and enhance and really grow your parks, you really need those private sector partners, and you need nonprofit organizations, and you need a voice. You need an advocate in the community saying this is really important. The city can't do it alone. We really shouldn't do it alone. These parks belong to the community and the neighbors, and we want them to feel ownership and to give back to their parks.
That's exactly right. When you think about some of the best and most beautiful park systems across the country, they have strong advocates, strong friends groups that help come alongside and support. So we lift up with the volunteer groups. We have over 1,000 hours, or over 1,000 volunteers a year that give over thousands and thousands of hours back to our community. And also, we really want neighbors to really know that there's opportunities for them to sit on committees or be a part of change, or really have an opportunity to change how these spaces feel welcoming to the community, how to make sure that everyone has a voice in the decisions that are being made and that there is place for advocacy.
Yeah. So we only have a couple minutes left of this section, but a few big things you're taking on in the years ahead. So we know that there are parts of our city, especially over on the southeast side, that need green space, that are deplete green space, and we know we need to add parks. And then we also know that we have some beautiful buildings and lodges in some of our parks that have not been reinvested in, that really need an infusion of funds to revitalize those spaces. So you want to talk a little bit about what some of your hopes and goals are?
Yeah, so most recently we really kind of looked at like what do we want Friends to accomplish over the next 5 years, and as an organization with our board support and many of our donors, we really want to add 5 new parks over the next 5 years. It's a lofty goal, but I think it's feasible and doable, and we know it's so needed. And then in addition to that, I'm a huge fan of community buildings that are in park spaces, and MLK Lodge is a beautiful space that has unfortunately not been used to its full capacity, and I think there's a great opportunity for our community to come together. So we'll be kind of putting together the challenge of helping to fundraise with help from the city and other funding support, but that'll be a big piece of what we do. And then from there, I'd like to see the Roosevelt Lodge building redone as well. It's a beautiful gem that is, kind of hidden in a park space that could be really utilized by the neighbors. And future goals is I hope to also see an event space downtown that would also be in a park that could be used for weddings and graduations and picnics and so many other opportunities. Just we don't have something like that in the city yet, and I think that would be my final feather in my cap.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of, I think, important initiatives to take on over the next 5 years.
For sure.
So thank you for that. Looks like we're out of time for this segment, so we're going to take a little break, and then we'll come back together for some questions.
88.1 FM WYCE, a proud member of the Grand Rapids Community Media Center, has been serving the Grand Rapids community and beyond for over 30 years, offering a world of music through commercial-free, independent radio. Head on over to WYCE.org today, where you can stream our broadcast 24/7, check out exclusive artist interviews, or make a donation. From everyone at 88.1 FM WYCE, thank you for your support.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups, local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
Welcome back to City Connection and the conversation with Mayor Bliss and Stephanie Adams of Friends of Grand Rapids Parks continues. We have a few questions, but also want to bring up some events that you didn't get a chance to mention. So let's talk about what's coming up.
Do you want to talk about it? Green Gala and then Blues on the Grand?
Yeah, so our annual Green Gala event is coming up actually next week, Thursday already. We plan it. It takes almost 9 months, so by the time it gets here, it's like, oh my gosh, it's right here. This event, we always move to a new park every year, but because of COVID, we're doing it our second time at Amenity Park. Great space for social distancing and making sure people are as comfortable as possible. And this year we're going to feature a hot air balloon and some amazing food as we do. It's our 10-year anniversary of having this event, and it's really a great time. And really this year is just all about celebrating what we can do in parks and showing kind of just some magic that can happen. So we have a great lineup of local musicians and wonderful local food and local beers, and we're very excited. So a lot of this is made in partnership by sponsors like Acrisure and others. And yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm a little biased because I was on the planning committee early on.
Well, when I first came to Friends, it was the first thing people said is like, oh, we love your gala. It's not really kind of a gala. It's more of like a fun event and people get together. We still yak at people a little bit, but it is a good time.
Yeah.
So next Thursday, and tickets online?
Tickets are available online at friendsofgrparks.org. Yep. Mm-hmm. Tickets are available through actually this Friday, so we can get our food order in. So. Yeah, and not only do we do events like that, this is a great event that we do, but other people will bring us in for really unique, different events, and one of them this year is also Blues on the Grand. Many people might remember as Blues on the Mall, and we're doing 3 events with them this year, and all of the beer and wine sales are going to help support Parks and Trees in Grand Rapids through our organization. So if you want to see Mayor sling some drinks and purchase a beer from her and help support parks, join us over the next 2. There's an event in August and one in September. So,
yeah.
Blues on the Grand, but we're on the Grand.
Amenity Park.
Yeah. Okay, favorite spot for
yes,
sure.
It is. It is a very hot spot in the city.
Yeah.
Great place for having events.
Yeah, especially now with Rose Park Circle not being available. Right. It seems like most of the events that typically would be at Rose Parks have shifted over to Naboan.
Perfect, and those are free events, and the sales from those concessions then benefit.
Exactly. Yep. Free event. The music was amazing. We did one in July, and the next one is the 19th, and then September 9th.
Sounds wonderful. Mary, you had a couple other questions you didn't get to, or things you wanted to bring up.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how people can get involved and volunteer, and even if people are interested in becoming a citizen forester, or we didn't really touch on that, but I know a lot of people in the city love trees. As Stephanie said, one of our goals in the city is to get to a 40% tree canopy for a whole host of reasons, not just environmental, but it's even good for people's health and clean air, and there's a lot of people who have partnered with us to do that and help plant trees. 2 things, maybe you can touch on. One, we're working really hard to plant trees in public spaces, but we can't reach that 40% tree canopy unless we also have trees in private spaces.
And then if you want to get involved, not just help planting trees, but kind of be a leader in this space, Friends takes the lead on training people.
Yeah, so we've been we've had this basically citizen science class for a long time, and we've named that Neighborhood Foresters. We really want it to be something that anybody can be a part of. And it really is just kind of this commitment to saying, you know, I really support trees in my community. I really care about maybe the trees on my block. And it starts with someone just coming out and volunteering with us. We have 4 classes you can take at your own pace and just be a part of that. And, you know, the Mayor's Greening Initiative is another big program that we do every single year. We plant 300 trees with over 400 volunteers at one time. Now with COVID restrictions, we've really kind of spread that out over a couple days just to make sure we can keep people safe as possible, but that's coming up this fall. And that's really a great entry point for people to get involved. We've seen so many people kind of go from just, you know, not even being comfortable using a shovel or knowing that much about trees, but becoming a fierce advocate. And that includes some of our youngest in our community. We have a program in the summer where after we plant all the trees, we hire kids from the neighborhood to help go back and water the trees right within their neighborhood. So we have 10 kids, they're youth, I should say, young adults, right, that go back in and they're watering these trees. And we actually track their learning and education and their passion for the outdoors through this program. And it's really, really made a huge difference. So there's
We still call them the green team.
We do call them the green team. Yep, our youth green team. And they're all kids right from that neighborhood. And they ride their bikes all summer long and get involved. And then we do things like we'll take them on a hiking trip, a kayak trip, just to continue to give them experiences in the environmental spaces that we have throughout the city. A lot of kids, and even adults, when you ask them what their favorite park is, it's usually the park within their own backyard. A lot of people haven't gone around, and I'll even say I haven't been to all 76 parks in our city. I need to do that, but you know, it's a lot to get to.
Yeah, it is. And then you touched on this a little bit with kayaking, and we've talked about it before on this show. So, you know, we're in our, 12th year of working on the river restoration project. And part of that is not just the restoring the rapids to their natural state, but really thinking about the river corridor as a whole, including the trail connectivity along the river as well as green space along the river. And through that process, Friends of Grand Rapids Parks has been a part of conversations and planning processes looking at, you know, what is the future programming and maintenance and sustainability of those spaces. And I think kayaking is a great example of how to get people more comfortable with the river, especially people who've never been in a boat before, and you've done some of that as well.
Yeah, so we've partnered with DGRI to bring this new program this summer to the river, and basically we're working to focus on our BIPOC community and making sure that people have access and feel comfortable in a boat, in the river, in the water. And so we have really focused on our very good partnerships that we have and invited people to invite then others. And we take groups out every Wednesday and every other Wednesday and Saturdays out on the river on a small group, about 12 people. We go on the river and have this amazing kind of communal experience. A gentleman who just came and did this event with us said he was able to experience something in a way that he didn't think that any other activity or sport really offered, and which I want to share because I think it's really impactful, because it impacted his emotional health, he said, by going out and just having this kind of one-on-one opportunity to kind of take the boat off a little bit on his own. Then he was able to have this really interesting networking opportunity where he was chatting with others on the way back, and you do that, you know, in this kayak space. And then finally, he worked on exercise. So he really was able to kind of touch on 3 different things. And we were kind of just chatting how that doesn't really happen in a lot of other activities that you can take place. And so we really have been working with the attendees of this group, who are all either some of our Black or Brown community members, and saying, how do we continue to create open, welcoming spaces, and what other activities can we make sure that are being opened up, and really kind of creating thoughtful groups around, so that we can have open, honest conversation of making sure that all of these spaces in Grand Rapids are welcoming.
Is there still opportunity for somebody to get involved in that?
Yes, we are doing these programs all the way through September, and if anybody is interested, and we are giving the most opportunity for people of color to take those trips with us, and it's actually led by someone on our team who happens to be an African American female as well.
And your website, is that the best way to kind of get more information on that?
It is, or just a direct email to Stephanie@friendsofgrparks.org.
Okay. All right. Well, I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about just some of the other events, and I don't know if this is under your purview, but Richmond Park, I saw there's going to be a free dog swim day or dog day there. Is that true?
Yes, the city of Grand Rapids, through the Parks and Rec Department, does it every single year, right before the pools close. It's kind of that fun dog days of summer, last day before the pool closes, and all the pups get to jump in to Richmond Park.
Yeah, it is fun. You have to sign up because it's limited and how many people can attend, obviously, because of capacity, and then how many dogs are allowed. So if you're interested, you have to sign up. And I think almost every year it sells out. It fills up. So.
And I think they have 2 dog sizes too. So like a small dog day or a small dog time frame and a large dog, just like the dog parks.
Perfect. Just like kids too. You got to keep them in groups.
Exactly. That's true. Keep them in groups. Yeah.
Well, I just had a question that occurred to me. How many parks are along the Grand? When we were talking a little bit about the kayaking opportunity, and I was curious about that aspect, and maybe not all of them totally meaning that you can access the water from there. I'm thinking about Canal Park. There is a little bit of a ramp there, but how many parks?
So there's actually 5 parks along the city, within the city bounds along the parks, but not all of them have access to the river. You can probably finagle your way in and out of it, but and Riverside Park being the largest that has the most amount of green space right along the park space. But then there's Canal, 6th Street, and Navawan.
Butterworth, technically.
Yes,
kind of a. Hopefully, though, going back to adding green space, we're hoping that with the redevelopment of 201 Market, that there will be 2 green spaces added, both on the property on Fulton as well as 201 Market. Not just a green ribbon and trail along the river, but actually a linear green space with access to the river.
Okay. So. And then the aspect of wanting to increase that tree canopy, and I was just wondering the impact of 300 trees in a condensed period of time. How much does that move the needle when it comes to adding tree canopy here in Grand Rapids?
Well, I wish it was a lot more than it is.
It sounds like a lot of trees.
It is a lot of trees. It is a lot of trees. As you can imagine, the reason we plant so many is, we probably have a 15% attrition rate where they don't all viably make it. But the amount of trees that we're competing against from a canopy size aren't the same size exactly. So, if we were to compare it out in 20 years, it would definitely make a bigger difference. So that's why we have to do it, every year. And but really what we've been focusing on is even more private tree planting opportunities. So giving away trees to neighbors. We'll be doing that again. We'll have over 50 trees this fall that neighbors can get to plant on their own property. And those are the bigger pieces that make even more of an impact because neighbors have, as many opportunities as possible when we're kind of limited to a 4x4 plot.
I think the important thing to think about with our tree canopy in our city is that we have an overall tree canopy, which is an average of the entire city, which we're at, 35%-ish?
Yeah.
But then if you drill down to certain neighborhoods, we have some neighborhoods where the tree canopy is like 45%, 48%, and then you have parts of the city like downtown, which is a largely built out concrete environment, which is less than 10%. So you have different goals for different sections of the city. So for downtown, our hope is to get to 10% tree canopy downtown. So you've seen us do some of that, even not just in the public right away, which actually Friends has been helping with, but even with like the redevelopment in front of Van Andel. So you have this huge concrete, blah. That's not a technical term, but I mean, it was just a sea of concrete. And we added trees and greenery in that space. So we're trying to identify, same with Studio Park, right? That used to be an asphalt parking lot, and now you have green space there. So we're really trying, and then you have some parts of the city, like in the southeast side, where it's closer to like 18%, 19%. And in those neighborhoods, we really want to get closer to 40%. And that's where you often have this combination of poor air quality and poor outcomes, health outcomes. And you have kind of these heat islands. So we have different goals for different parts, and the Mayor's Greening Initiative that we've done in partnership with Friends has really been focused on those parts of the city and those neighborhoods where it's well below that 40%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great information. And then your event coming up, the Green Gala next Thursday, but ticket sales cut off Friday?
Yes. Yep.
All right.
We have to put in a food order, so
All
we
right.
might be able to sneak some things in there, but right now that's where we're kind of
All
focusing
right.
on.
Well, feel free to give an address, a web address, or even a phone number and email for ticketing.
Yeah, so friendsofgrparks.org is
All
the website to go to.
All right.
And you can always just search for us on Facebook too. The links are all over the place.
Perfect. Well, Stephanie Adams with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, thanks for joining us today on City Connection.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
We'll have a little break right now. We'll be back for the last 15 minutes with the mayor.
How do you build a strong local food economy? Meet Chris. Chris is opening Osteria Rosa, a locally sourced Italian restaurant in a building brought back to life by 616 Development. But he doesn't know any local farmers to supply him with food year-round. This is Melissa. Melissa runs the Fulton Street Farmers Market and publishes a long list, even in the dead of winter, of available produce, meats, bakery goods, and more on the Rapidian. This is Amy. Amy wants to do more to support the farmers in her local food economy. Amy talks to Melissa, who introduces her to farmers at the Fulton Street Farmers Market, and Amy, in turn, publishes their stories, also on the Rapidian. Chris hears about the Rapidian and now has access to a local grocery list and information that he needs to make connections with local farmers. He feeds his patrons with local food year-round. Connections multiply. Meals are shared. A stronger local food economy is built.
GRTV is a place where you can share your videos with the Grand Rapids community. A place you can share your passion, your opinion, your viewpoint, and your story. We offer low-cost classes on video production, free equipment lending to certified members, and a non-commercial channel for broadcast on cable television in the Grand Rapids area. GRTV is a true free speech forum and will not censor your content. If you're already creating videos and would like to air your show on GRTV, visit grtv.org/shows/submit. To see what equipment we have to offer, check out our equipment page at grtv.org/equipment. And if you're interested in taking our production classes, head to grtv.org/classes. Use our platform to amplify your voice at GRTV, a service of the Community Media Center.
Welcome back to City Connection, and again, great conversation with Stephanie Adams of Friends of Grand Rapids Parks. And as a matter of fact, we have a few questions that actually linger from that conversation. And one of them from Todd is, how do I find a park in my neighborhood? And Mayor, you can help with these questions.
I can. So on our city website, if you go to our parks department, you can, there's actually a couple different searches you can do. So you can do an amenity search, which is this great addition that we added, I believe about a year ago. So if you're interested in pickleball or frisbee golf or you know, where you can drop in a kayak. So you can put an amenity search and it'll tell you what park in the city has that amenity. If you want to rent a pavilion for a birthday party or you know, tennis courts or a basketball court, you can put all that in and find out what park. And then we also have maps where you can look at your neighborhood park.
Okay.
Yes, and that includes even, so we have a number of parks in the city that are under they're in our parks plan. So like let's say Coit Park, the city maintains that, but it's actually a GRPS owned park. So we partner with the school, so it also can pull up green spaces that are technically school spaces, but kind of fall under our jurisdiction as a Grand Rapids Park.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question on that very subject resulting from your conversation with Stephanie, and this one is from Mary, and she's asking, what kind of trees should I be planting in my yard?
So the big thing about trees that we encourage folks to do is, one, plant a native tree. They do better in our climate. Some of the trees that we have in our city aren't native, and those are the ones that typically don't last as long. And then the other motto that we have is you want the right tree in the right place. So if you are planting a tree under, let's say, a utility line, you want to make sure that that tree that you plant isn't a tree that's going to grow 100 feet tall, right? You want a tree that's closer to a 25, 30-foot tree in height. So you want to look at the height of the tree, and then you also want to look at how close to plant it to other trees. So sometimes people will plant trees and they plant them too close, not really thinking about what that tree is going to look like in 10 years. So making sure that you have spacing appropriate for that tree and the amount of space that they're going to need for their as they take root and their roots sprawl out. The only other thing I would add, like at my house, many houses in the city, it depends on if you have a condo or what your home is like, but you have a lateral line. So if you want to be really careful not to plant your tree right over top of your lateral, because then those roots can grow into your lateral and they can cause a backup in your lateral. So that's something that sometimes people don't think about on their private property.
Okay, and where would you find that information? What native trees are? I guess as general web searches could help with that.
Yeah, but actually, so the Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, they have a whole page on forestry, and then we have a forestry department at the city, and we have an urban forest committee. So that's a committee that really looks at goals, priorities around our urban canopy. We have an urban forest plan at the city, and we actually have a list of trees that we recommend planting. And then if you have questions about a tree in front of your yard, or if you feel like a tree is diseased, you can always call the city, and our city forester will come out and take a look.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of those opportunities as far as the foresters kind of expertise team, and then the green team from the youth perspective. Paul asked the question, how would I get my daughter involved in that green team?
Oh, that's a great question. So your daughter, so the green team is supported through the Grow 1000 program. So the Grow 1000 program is a program that we started at the city to identify 1,000 jobs for young people throughout the city. And so our community's children, which is a department at the city, they help with the recruitment of young people and then the placement of those individuals. And so the green team is a part of our Grow 1000. So if you have a young person between the ages of 16 and 24 and they're looking for a summer job or they want to be on the green team, just go to the city website, look at the Grow 1000. Obviously, that program is coming to an end this month because school goes back in the fall. But we do that every year, and we start taking applications, I believe, at the end of April.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lots of interest in this topic, and I imagine it has a little bit to do with the idea of being outside is better these days, and just kind of growing that interest in the ownership aspect that you and Stephanie both mentioned, that really taking ownership of a neighborhood park or the well-being of that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's there are so many things I love about green space, but a number of years ago, when I first became mayor, we started this initiative with the school about connecting children to nature. So even beyond an urban canopy and beyond the goals we have around adding green space and making sure every child has access to a playground within safe walking distance from where they live, the reality is that we know being outside with nature is good for your emotional and mental health. We know that children are in front of a screen for more hours than they ever have been. Even think back to when we were growing up, we were outside all the time. What we know now is that kids are in front of a screen more than they are outside. So we want to get them back outside, but we also know that how people connect and build relationships is usually through play. It's usually when they're out doing something together. And so there's a lot of health benefits, but a lot of emotional benefits to being outside. And I think we saw that with the pandemic. People started to gravitate to being outside, not just because it was safer, but it really is good for your mental health.
And that was obviously, so much of the conversation today on that, so that's really evidenced. I'm going to do a real quick shifting of gears because we have about 2.5-3 minutes left, but there's a subject that we've kind of put on our conversations but not in depth before, and it's participatory budgeting. And I wanted to have you explain that a little bit to us and what the city is doing on that element.
Yeah, thank you for giving some time to talk about that. So the City Commission, after we passed our budget, our annual budget, we had a pot of money set aside from the recovery plan dollars. So these are federal dollars that we got at the city to support a number of initiatives. and coming out of the pandemic. So the City Commission decided a couple things. One, we would put some of those funds towards violence prevention, some of those funds towards affordable housing. So we're likely going to take $5 million and put it into an affordable housing fund. And then we allocated $2 million to go into investments in every ward through a participatory budgeting process. So we divided up the $2 million. $1 million is going to go towards the third ward, $600,000 towards the first ward, and $400,000 to the second ward. And that was largely based on demographics, but also poverty rates and need. And then each ward identified 3 individuals from that ward to serve on a steering committee. So there's a 9-person steering committee. And then we are contracting with the national organization that leads participatory budgeting processes to come up with a process that for each of those wards, residents will be able to identify priority projects, and then there will be a process to vote on those ideas, and the ones that get the most votes will get funded with those dollars. So it truly is, putting the money into the neighborhood and letting residents and people who live in those neighborhoods decide how those dollars are spent. There's a couple kind of non-negotiables. These are one-time funds, so it has to be ideas that can be funded one time, so it can't be, a program that it would go on into perpetuity or need additional sustainable funding. So we're talking about big impact, one-time funding ideas, and then we want the dollars spent within the next 6 months. So we put together the steering committee a couple weeks ago. They're going through training right now with the Participatory Budgeting organization, and then we hope to have it launched really sometime in the next 30 days with ideas generated, and then votes, and then final decision on how those $2 million will be spent by the end of this year.
Okay.
So it's an exciting process. We've never done it before. I think we have other processes that are somewhat like participatory budgeting, whether it's pitch night or the neighborhood match fund, but they don't actually follow all of the tenets of a participatory budgeting process. So it's the first time. I think we're going to learn a lot. My hope is that we're able to have a huge impact in our neighborhoods and in our wards, and then potentially allocate funding to do a similar process next year and maybe even the year after.
Okay, and it's on that theme again of really the ownership of a community with what's going on.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's exciting.
Mayor Bliss, thanks again. It's great to have you back, and with City Connection being the first Monday of the month, September will be a little bit of a shift in the date because that is a holiday.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be back with you in September, but we'll clarify the date later on. Mayor Bliss, again, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to City Connection here on GRTV Livewire Channel 24, and watch for rebroadcasts throughout the month on Channel 25. I'm Linda Galash with Community Media Center.